So on behalf of Microsoft and Boyer and Associates, I want to welcome you to today's webinar where Boyers and Associates will tackle the topic of what you need to know about Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. Microsoft released the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit back in 2021, and since that time, Boyer and Associates has been one of the Microsoft partners that has been on the leading edge of helping nonprofit customers understand the benefits of this solution through their extensive efforts hosting customer-facing webinars, live product demos, and office hours. And now I will turn it over to Tom from Boyer and Associates, who will lead today's webinar. Tom?
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. We've got a good agenda. We're going to be walking through what is Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit, why choose MC4N. It's the acronym you may hear me use throughout the webinar here for Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. Then we're going to get into a hands-on demo where I'll be showing AI Copilot, fundraising and engagement, constituent marketing journeys, volunteer engagement and management, and the program impact dashboard. And like Brian said, we're going to have time at the end for Q&A. So feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go, and we will do our best to get through as many of those questions at the end of today's webinar. I'm excited for this conversation because my background is in technology, but I've been volunteering with a number of nonprofits for several years now, and a recurring experience is the kind of disparate and disconnected systems. So today we're going to be talking about how Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit can really help bridge some of those gaps and help your organizations achieve more, do more with less. And a point of relevance for kind of like Brian was saying, why Boyer is presenting on this webinar is we've been working with Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit for a number of years already. And this year, we were honored to be recognized as Microsoft's US Partner of the Year in the Social Impact Inclusion Changemaker category. And there were over 800 other organizations in the running for that recognition. So we're honored to be continuing this partnership with Microsoft and to be presenting with you all today. So jumping into what is Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit, essentially it is a number of different solutions that Microsoft has been building for a long time that have now been integrated together into a whole that is greater than the sum of their parts. At the base of this whole, or what brings everything together, is the nonprofit common data model. And this has an interesting story, which if we had more time, I would go into further detail. But essentially, Microsoft worked with a number of nonprofits to identify the data model that is common across their functions, which benefits your organization because you don't need to reinvent this wheel. And this data model enables more fluid data flow between these different solutions. So you can, for example, report in Power BI using data from fundraising and engagement and constituent marketing journeys. That's just one example of how having this common data model makes it easier for your organization to utilize Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit with less of that kind of proprietary data model definition and maintenance that you would otherwise have to do. So today we're going to look through fundraising and engagement, constituent marketing journeys, volunteer engagement, volunteer management, and as well as several of the integrations such as LinkedIn, SharePoint, Power BI, and how all of these solutions come together into a more holistic digital platform. So with that as some framing for what is Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit, let's talk about why choose MC4N. On the screen here, we've got the three main objectives that kind of Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit is focused on enabling for your organization. So knowing your donors and supporters, delivering effective programming, and accelerating mission outcomes. Each of these areas lines up with some of the solutions that we saw on the previous slide and the solutions that we will be seeing in today's demo. So we're going to look at how you can know your donors and supporters better through the use of AI copilots, through the fundraising and engagement functionality, and constituent marketing. how you can deliver more effective programming with pre-built volunteer engagement and volunteer management functionality from Microsoft, and how you can accelerate mission outcomes, again, using pre-built functionality in Power BI in the form of a program impact dashboard. So this flywheel, these objectives come together and really feed off of one another. So the more you know your donors and supporters, the more able your organization is to deliver effective programming and accelerate those mission outcomes. And at the center of this flywheel, we have secure donor and program participant data. In order for any of these objectives to be completed individually and to complete them cohesively, kind of as a group, we need that security of data at the center. And I'll conclude today's conversation by highlighting that security and why Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit enables data security in a bit more detail. As I jump into the demo here, let's start with the Know Your Donors and Supporters section. And in the wise words of the Lion King, there's more to see in this demo than can ever be seen, or there's more to see in Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit than we can easily show you in a 1-hour demo here. So today I've curated a number of features and benefits to really highlight the most compelling and important functionality. And we will share some resources at the end of this webinar for you to continue learning and going further in the direction that is most relevant for your organization. So a big part of knowing your donors and supporters is communication. And with AI copilots, you can save time and improve quality of communication. You've likely heard over recent months about how AI is entering much more mainstream adoption, and there's been rapid advancements in what is possible and what is mature enough in the AI world for production use. Now, it's exciting to be able to share some of that today in the forms of Copilot and how Copilot can help you summarize meetings and emails, how it can draft email responses, and enable you to view and update Dynamics 365 records associated with that email address. So making CRM or Dynamics updates within the context that you're already working in. And how you can summarize and catch up on changes to opportunities with Copilot as well. So let's go ahead and jump into our demo environment here and see some of this, how Copilot can help you save time and improve quality of communication in action. So here I am just using Edge browser and accessing Teams online. And I'm looking at a recap from a meeting. So you can see, just as you would in a typical, after a Teams call, you have the recording, transcript, attendance. And if I go up here to the other tabs along the top, I also have this Sales Copilot tab. Now, when I open this tab up, I see different sections that all work together. So I can click on a follow-up item, and I'll see my transcript jump to where that follow-up is being taken from. And the timeline along the bottom here is highlighting with a little diamond where this follow-up is in the timeline. This is really helpful that Copilot has essentially reviewed the transcript. It has pulled out highlights and follow-ups, and it has synced together these different elements so that I can move through the recap of this meeting with more fluidity and spending less time kind of hunting and pecking through a transcript or through maybe the notes that I had taken previously. So this style of recap is really helpful for improving how much information we retain from a meeting, and maybe a week or a month later or longer, being able to go back and quickly reorient to the context. For example, if in the follow-up here, I'm not getting all of the information that I want from the transcript or from the timeline, I can actually hit play and hear the audio, maybe tone of voice, or if there was some sort of other information in the audio there, we can hear that in the recording. There's some additional features of Copilot within Teams where we can see keywords mentioned. So reports was an important topic in this conversation. And when I select the reports keyword, I can see these 4 diamonds show up in my timeline, and I can select them and again see the transcript jump to the relevant area where this keyword is being mentioned. And then we have some additional details such as how long people were speaking and listening, average pause, helpful insights as we work on kind of improving how we run meetings over time. So this is where Copilot is currently showing up within Teams. And now if I switch into Outlook, this is a demo inbox. And on the right sidebar here, you can see Sales Copilot. And connecting what you just saw in Teams into Outlook here, we can draft an email response with Copilot. And you can see a number of suggestions, including summarize a sales meeting. So what Copilot is doing in the background here is actually going into that Teams transcript and summarizing it into an email format that I can share with Spencer, who was attending that meeting. Now this looks pretty good. This is a follow-up from our call on August 22nd. We discussed the impact reports. That is accurate. And Copilot is also pulling information from CRM that Spencer is associated with this company, this architecture firm. And it's highlighting that takeaway that we were just looking at, or that next action for putting Spencer at the same table as the director of fundraising at the upcoming gala. Now, I know Spencer is really focused on efficient communication, so I'm going to ask Copilot to please make this email more concise. And Spencer has a very friendly style of communication, so we're going to change the tone of the email from professional to friendly. Now, what I'm demonstrating here is that it's not just one and done in terms of making a request to Copilot. It is oftentimes a multi-turn or more of a conversational back and forth to make sure that you're getting the result that you want. So this looks better. We still have the key information, that takeaway, but it's a little bit more concise. So I can go ahead and copy this content and compose a new email and paste that in. And just like in most areas with AI and Copilots right now, it's important to proofread and make sure that I'm doing the final steps here. So maybe changing my demo account from global admin to Tom, or making any other adjustments that I want to make to this email. Now, drafting emails is just one function of Copilot within Outlook. We can also, if I clear out my draft for now, we can also have Copilot help us with summarizing emails. And as I'm sure many of you experience, email can be a bit of a fire hose. So having a quick 3-bullet summary of what this email thread is discussing is really helpful as we're context switching between many different environments and topics. So we can see the summary of this email where Spencer expressed interest in donating to our demo nonprofit. And there's a little citation here that actually points to where a direct quote of where this information came from. Then we have another citation here where our demo account responded with a request for a meeting. And we can actually go back into the email chain here to see that request for meeting. Now you'll also notice when I jump around to different emails within this chain, Copilot is actually regenerating the summary on the fly. And so we are getting a summary up to that point in time, or up to that email. So if I come back up to the most recent email, then we have a summary of the full email chain here. Again, a helpful feature when you have a lot of back and forth in an email and you just need to get kind of the quick Cliff Notes version of what's being discussed up to that point. And we can see a great turn of events here. Spencer confirmed a $500,000 donation in the latest email. I can choose to save this summary, and there's a suggested record here, which is the opportunity in fundraising and engagement that Spencer is associated with. Or I could search for another record, such as maybe I want to save it to Spencer's contact, or the account that he is associated with. I can also copy the summarized information, put it in Teams, or maybe save it in my notes for later. And this is some of the important summarization and drafting functionality that Copilot offers us here within Outlook. There's a few other proposed or suggested actions, and you can also describe a more kind of custom email if there's a particular topic that you want to respond to Spencer on. In addition to this summarization and email generation functionality, Copilot also helps link together our workflow within Outlook and the information relevant to this email chain that we have saved in Dynamics 365. Personally, this is one of the features that I use most often and really appreciate that I can come right into the contact record here and update information on the fly. So I can click into Edit Record, and now these fields become editable. And maybe I've got a different business phone and it changed to 99 at the end here. I can update that, it'll think, and then give me a confirmation that the update has been completed. We can also configure this if you don't want everyone in your organization to be able to update these records. So just like many things in the Microsoft world, permissions and security can get very granular as you need them. In addition to updating records in Dynamics 365, we can actually jump straight to a record, which is a great way to move from this email chain to the relevant records within Dynamics. And this brings us to the third area of where Copilot shows up within our Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit demo. So we initially saw Copilot within Teams and how that related into Outlook. And now here within Dynamics 365, now will actually bring us into the correct app. We want to be in Fundraising and Engagement. So we can configure where Copilot opens up by default there. So going back to the opportunity that we're showing in this demo, we can open up Copilot in the right sidebar and ask it a number of different questions. So we're looking at an opportunity record for a potential donation, and I want to summarize this opportunity. And I'll just confirm that it is this record that I want summarized. And now Copilot is going to scan a number of fields that we've selected for the summary, and it is going to provide that back in a short text here. So it looked through and found the 100,000 estimated revenue, as well as looking through the description field here and brought some of that information back in the bulleted points and the expected close date as well. We can ask Copilot to also show recent changes for this opportunity. For example, if I'm collaborating with a coworker and maybe they've updated something and I want to make sure that I have the most recent information, Copilot can help me understand, great, there's been no changes to this opportunity in the last 7 days, or if there had been changes, it would tell me the field and what had been changed, as well as giving me a link to then go out to the audit history, which you've likely experienced if you've worked in a CRM before, to see that change history kind of row by row there as well. So Copilot here is really helping us surface information that already exists within Dynamics 365, but sometimes it can be overwhelming, the amount of information, especially when we're collaborating with a variety of people inside of Dynamics. And so Copilot is helping to surface this information in a more intuitive and easy to navigate way. Like I mentioned at the start, there's more to see here with Copilot than we have time for today. So just summarizing real quick that in this context, Copilot is really helping to save time and improve quality of communication so that we spend less time manually reading through emails or transcribing notes from meetings, and we can focus more on the nuance of the communication that we're having with donors and other stakeholders. Now let's continue looking at fundraising and engagement and see how you can modernize donor and constituent engagement to better know your supporters. In this part of the demo, we're going to look at constituent and household management, opportunity, donation, designation, and gift batch management as well. And there's more that we won't have time to cover today, but I will briefly highlight. So back inside of Dynamics 365, fundraising and engagement, you can see which application I'm in from the app selector at the top here. And we could move around to other applications if we wanted within Dynamics here. Now we've seen some of this opportunity record already, and we're going to come back to this, but let's start from the contact. After all, so much of our work has to do with the relationships and communication that we have. And so contact records are a critical piece of enabling that communication and how we can track information related to these stakeholders. You'll see we have our typical contact information fields, a variety of text entry, as well as lookup fields. So a great way to make sure that we are just associating records that already exist within the system and not entering maybe duplicates or an error here. So Dynamics is helping me confirm that I'm associating the right company or a company that already exists within the system with this record. We also have more configurable components on this form. So for your organization, if there's more fields here than are necessary, you can trim down the fields to just what you need to see. And that's one of the major benefits of Dynamics 365 is that ability to configure in a way that is easy to maintain over time, rather than a fully kind of custom solution. Also out of the box with fundraising and engagement, we can track supporting objectives on this summary part of the contact record. And as with most records in Dynamics 365, we have a timeline view here where we can see phone calls, emails, tasks that are relevant to this contact. This is a great way to quickly take a note as well on maybe an interaction or something you want to follow up. And you can schedule tasks to make that follow-up or next step even more clear. In the center here, we have a control that is specific to fundraising and engagement. And this is a helpful summary view of an in-progress opportunity related to this contact, as well as some KPIs or key performance indicators or key metrics related to this contact. So we can see the last gift amount, lifetime giving, their household details as well. And these are all being updated based on other information within the system. So next time Spencer gives a gift, we will have updated information here. Also along the top of this record, you'll see we're just looking at the summary tab here, but there's even more information that's relevant to our relationship with Spencer. So we can track address information, maybe for physical mailing. We can track address changes and donation information, and quickly move between Spencer's contact record and the specific transaction that Spencer has completed. We can also view volunteer engagement and preview of functionality that we'll be looking at here shortly. This is being pulled in from the volunteer management application. So showing how data in that common data model can be surfaced within different applications within Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. And in this context, we're specifically seeing how volunteer information can also be shown here in a more fundraising and engagement focused view. If we wanted to, we could jump to and see more specific detail about that record as well. And then there's always more tabs that we can associate with the records here. Similar to how I mentioned all of these fields and user interface elements can be configured. We can also change, add, remove which tabs are shown along the top here. One particular one to highlight that can be a beneficial addition is adding in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So giving a quick view here of how LinkedIn Sales Navigator can be added to the contact record. So you can quickly look up member profile information. You can look at the account that they're associated with and have that real-time updated information about the members' kind of professional information right within the flow of your work inside of fundraising and engagement. And if you are prospecting, you can also send some follow-up communication right here within Dynamics. So going back into Spencer's record, let's go ahead and click on this opportunity that we have in the center of his summary view. So now we're moving from Spencer's contact record back to this opportunity that we opened previously from Outlook. A couple of highlights here. Along the top, you can see this process flow, where we can see different stages that this opportunity with Spencer is progressing through. This process flow, again, like everything in Dynamics, can be configured. So if you have different stages for opportunities, or if you have different types of processes, you can also change that on the fly here from the command bar. So just switch the process. And you can also configure the steps that are within each stage. So maybe as part of the develop stage, we need to identify stakeholders and competitors and mark that as complete. This can be a great way to ensure standardization, especially if you're going through a change management effort with your team and improving or standardizing how these opportunities are nurtured. We can also see the timeline control here, similar to what we saw on the contact record, and a few more elements that are specific to fundraising and engagement. We have our preferences for what this opportunity is focused on. So we can see the objective of maternal health here. We can also track reporting plan, as we saw in that meeting summary in Teams. And as many of you likely experienced, reporting and that communication with stakeholders is a critical part of work in the nonprofit sector. And so being able to track that right here in one of the existing tabs is very helpful. We can also track stage history and see which activities were completed and how long this opportunity was in these different stages, as well as the designation plan. So we have the specific percentage of where this donation will be designated to, and to show some of the logical connection between records that we have here in fundraising and engagement, let's look at the donor commitments tab. So this is where we start to see the connection between an opportunity, a donor commitment, and a transaction. And this is just one example of how information flows through fundraising and engagement through that common data model in a way that makes it more maintainable, so your team doesn't have to build this data model yourselves, and in a way that makes it easier to report on this information over time. So if I select this donor commitment, it will take me from the opportunity to the donor commitment record here. We can see that much of the relevant information has been brought forward. So Spencer, maternal health, payment schedule, and we have this button to convert to donation right there from the donor commitment. So once we have a confirmed transaction, we can go ahead and process that here. I believe I have all of the relevant fields filled in. And so now we have this as a completed transaction, and we can generate a receipt from the command bar, or we could have a Power Automate flow, a form of automation, to manually trigger, or we could have it automatically trigger, that a receipt or an acknowledgement letter is sent based on the completion of this transaction. That is another whole interesting conversation, which we won't go too far into detail on today, but the quick preview is that we could set a matrix or conditional logic. So if the donation is over a certain amount and in a particular territory, and they work in a particular industry, then we're going to send this acknowledgement letter. And that type of automation is a good example of how fundraising and engagement and constituent marketing journeys, another module within Dynamics, can be brought together or extended with Power Automate as well. So really just highlighting the way that different parts of the system work together and can be extended to meet your nonprofit's workflow. Now that we've looked through some of the development portions and the progression between opportunity, donor commitment, and transaction, let's go ahead and actually walk over to the gift section of fundraising and engagement. So here we are in the gifts area, and I'm going to quickly show how we can batch gifts together. So when I select gift batches, we see a list here, and I can select into one of these batch gifts, and we can see the gifts that are associated with this batch. This is another control that is included with fundraising and engagement and is tailor-built or purpose-built for the nonprofit world. I can select add a new gift. This is a lookup field, so it's going to pull Spencer or whichever contact or donor I'm looking for. I can enter their amount here, select my source, designation, say maternal health, another lookup field, so it's making sure that I'm not mistyping or entering a different designation that we don't already have. And then when I save this gift, our total at the top here updates. So now we have 4 gifts in this batch and the total accordingly. This is a good example of how there is this industry-specific functionality within fundraising and engagement to help modernize your workflows. Now we can also import gifts or import donations in batch form. So if I move over here into the donation import area, I can use the wizard in the import donations to select a file, go through, review the data, make sure it's mapping correctly between my CSV or Excel file and the data model that we have within fundraising and engagement. And then there's some nice visuals for error checking and confirming the import as well. This is a way to make data import easier for members of your team to do that doesn't require a developer or more technical skill set. And one other area to highlight within fundraising and engagement here are the dashboards. So if we take a look at our fundraising dashboard, these are several pre-built visuals, and you can see several different pre-built dashboards here that you can start using as you have data within fundraising and engagement. So you don't need to rebuild the wheel or kind of start from scratch. These are visuals that you can start using out of the box, as well as tailor or configure to your use case as you progress. Some helpful items within these visuals is we can drill down. So it's not just a pretty picture, but it is also interactive. So if we want to go from this gifts by month and year and drill down by donor into a bar chart, now we are doing this kind of data exploration live here within the dashboard. We can also select to see the records that are behind that visual. So now we have this chart and a table of the relevant transactions that make up that chart. Lastly, within fundraising and engagement, like I mentioned, there's more here to see than we can all cover today. But if you're interested in events, reports, or more of the configuration settings, there's definitely some additional great functionality to look at particularly in the event space. I was at a wonderful gala recently that I know was organized, at least in part, using this events functionality. So to recap, fundraising and engagement within Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit can help your organization modernize donor and constituent engagement to better know your supporters. And that common data model really makes all of this possible. Now, one more section within our Know Your Donors and Supporters category are constituent marketing journeys. And the major benefit that we're looking at here is enabling your nonprofit marketing teams to personalize outreach to donors and volunteers based on their history and interactions with your organization. So quickly jumping into the demo environment here, we have an example here of how you can segment your donors and stakeholders based on behaviors. So if they booked a transaction on or after 5 years ago, and if we have permission to email them. Then we can take, and this is just one example of how you can segment based on behavioral and demographic data. And it gets very granular with and, or, and also, and other forms of conditional logic to slice and dice your segments. Then we can take that segment and utilize it as the start of a journey. Then we use different tiles or steps in this journey canvas here within constituent marketing to compose this journey that this segment is going to go on. So let's say this one is volunteer sign up. We send them a text message, then we have a conditional branch. So based on how they respond to that text message, they are going to go down different branches on that journey. We can also set a goal for that journey. So mark this journey complete or as successful if we have, say, 10 conversions or 10 people sign up for our newsletter. We also have this full what you see is what you get email editor, and you can go into HTML or more kind of technical authoring modes if you would like, and use features like content blocks to make these emails reusable over time. We also have Copilot showing up here within constituent marketing, and Copilot can suggest some text or content for your emails, as well as one of my favorite features that I recently learned about is you can take your URL from your website, give it to Copilot in the context of an email here, and it will style your email using the styles from your website. So fonts, colors, sizing can be a great way to make sure you're staying on brand in these different touch points. Now, we can also select frequency. So an important part of the communication role in nonprofits is making sure that we're not causing friction or burning anyone out in our communication with them. So if you have multiple journeys going at the same time, we can set a cap on how often we are speaking to that audience. And we can also branch multiple of these journeys together. So definitely a lot to dive into if you're interested in constituent marketing journeys within Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. One quick visual example is, let's say our donor received this email. This is some of the branching logic that's happening in the background. So based on how they interact with the email, they select donate now. And so that starts sending them down a certain path. And now we have this series of steps showing on their contact record the insights of how they've interacted with our marketing efforts. And the takeaway here is how you can use constituent marketing to help convert more kind of passive people within your network into active donors and volunteers. So we just ran through how you can know your donors and supporters with AI copilots, fundraising and engagement, and constituent marketing. Now let's take a quick look at delivering effective programming with the volunteer engagement and volunteer management solutions in MC4N. So for the sake of time today, just quickly highlighting Volunteer Engagement is a pre-built public-facing website that you can use and you can theme and style it to your organization to surface opportunities to your volunteer network so they can search through, schedule themselves for volunteer opportunities, and it's all with secure authentication. So you know that the right people are seeing the right information for your volunteer opportunities. This is a great way to take some out-of-the-box functionality from Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit and use it to improve how your volunteers find opportunities that match their skills, interests, and schedules. And on the back end, this volunteer engagement is being facilitated by the volunteer management application, which is how your internal staff can more efficiently manage day-to-day processes for recruiting, onboarding, and retaining large pools of volunteers. So just to take a quick look at what that looks like in production here, or in a demo environment, we have our published engagements, our engagements in draft, and our list of volunteer participants. With the published engagements, we have a number of different tabs for managing the description and location of that engagement. And this information then goes out to that public-facing portal if you set it up for volunteer engagement that way. And it is a great way to content author so that different types of users can come in here and enter this engagement opportunity information. You can also set different requirements for which volunteers are eligible for this opportunity, the scheduling information, and what sort of automated communication you're going to have with this engagement opportunity. So taken together, this volunteer engagement, public-facing website, and volunteer management internal application for your team to use are a great way to more efficiently manage day-to-day processes for recruiting, onboarding, and retaining large pools of volunteers. And now let's touch on accelerating mission outcomes with the program impact dashboard. So this is a helpful use of Power BI to understand the impact of funds raised, programs delivered, and outcomes achieved. You can streamline your preparation of external reports. And so you could say, take a screenshot of total revenue raised, total programs delivered, and include this in a report to one of your major donors. And like most Power BI dashboards, this is interactive. So if we select the education bar here, we can see now our programs are filtered down to that education view. Another way to enable your different stakeholders to engage with your data in a more interactive way. So it's not just passive consumption, but they are actively learning and interacting with the data from your nonprofit. So for the sake of time today, I'm going to just move quickly on this item so we have a little bit of time for questions here. So bringing these all together, the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit vision combines knowing your donors and supporters, delivering effective programming, and accelerating mission outcomes. And like I mentioned at the start, the security of donor and program participant data at the center is really the hub that makes all of this possible. And from a data security perspective, your organization is intaking a variety of different data and needs to make sure that that is staying secure so you can maintain trust with your stakeholders. And by using a solution like Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit, you reduce the number of touch points or failure points where that data could be exposed to bad actors. We can definitely go into that more later in further detail, but I want to thank you all for joining and direct you to a couple of resources where you can learn more. You can schedule a call with Boyer at this number here or email us. You can also sign up for an upcoming fundraising and engagement bootcamp that we have, which is a great way to learn from one of our wonderful trainers, Joanna, about everything that I just showed today, but in much more detail in fundraising and engagement. And you can check out on-demand Microsoft content. to learn more about how Microsoft supports nonprofits, both with this functionality, but also in more affordable licensing offers. And you can click through that guided tour that I was showing of constituent marketing, fundraising and engagement, as well as the volunteer functionality. So thanks again for joining. And now let's open it up for some questions and answers.
Thanks, Tom. Great job. So there are a couple questions that have been coming in a lot here at the end. So I'm going to try to go through a few of these. So Debbie McCann, is asking about import functionality or automation from an Excel spreadsheet perspective. So there is the ability to import from Excel, and it really comes down to being able to set up the mapping within Dynamics to that Excel spreadsheet. Once you have that mapping set up correctly, then you can import those Excel donations, or any record for that matter, into the system. But it just takes some work on the front end to map the actual fields in the system to your specific columns in the Excel spreadsheet. Another question that came in, can the engagements, the volunteer engagements, be hosted within a WordPress site? I believe the answer is yes. I'm going to defer to Tom, though, and see if he knows offhand.
Yep. So there are different ways to surface that volunteer management information that we're looking at, more the back end. By default, yep, it goes into that Power Pages volunteer engagement as the front end or the public facing portion, but you could configure that. It would be a little bit more custom development to integrate that with WordPress, but that definitely should be possible.
All right, Marilyn asked, is the Dynamics nonprofit offer available in Canada? It is. So you can get the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. Technically, just a little more on the licensing. If you remember at the beginning of the webinar, Tom had a slide that kind of showed the underlying technologies that underlie MC4N. Within the fundraising engagement one, you're actually looking at the Dynamics 365 Sales Enterprise. So that is the license that you need to use that application. In addition, there's some Azure services that manage some of the donations that run through. So there are some Azure services that go with it as well. And then you'll notice across the rest of these applications, depending on which of the components you're using, you will have different licensing that you may or may not need. So hopefully that helps helps with some clarity on the licensing piece. And Rick Rose, I see here you say, is there a single MC4N license level that includes all the Dynamics functionality we're seeing? So the Dynamics Sales Enterprise will show you, or will comprise everything in the fundraising engagement app, and will also give you volunteer management because it covers that Power Apps license. For the most part, you're going to basically be able to cover everything except constituent marketing journeys, LinkedIn, and SharePoint with that Dynamics 365 Sales Enterprise. Okay. Let's see some of the other questions in here. So Megan Walsh, could there be a way to incorporate giving in the volunteer module? So the platform is Dynamics 365 that you saw today, and you can actually build custom apps. So you can use some of the functionality within fundraising engagement. You could actually pull in the tables from that volunteer management app directly into your fundraising and engagement app and bring those two things together. From an implementation perspective, a lot of what we do from a Boyer perspective is taking some functionality out that doesn't fit the organization and then configuring the functionality that we're leaving in the app to work with what the users of that user group need. So more configuring it to that from that perspective. There was a question around reporting. So reporting within Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit, there's a few different ways to look at this. One is there are dashboards directly in Dynamics 365 that you can use. generally speaking, I look at those as I'm in the system and looking for something specific to that. I want to use my dashboards to navigate throughout the system. But then you'll notice over on the right side there, you have Power BI. So Power BI can sit across the entire Dynamics platform and other applications that you may already have, if it's an ERP or a different constituent management system that you're using as well. And you can use Power BI over the top of all of this to bring all that data together and then do some more deep analytics on it. And then you can actually take those dashboards that you build in Power BI and put them right back into your Dynamics app, whether that's fundraising engagement or volunteer management, for your constituents to go directly to those apps. We will be sending out a recording about a week after this webinar. Katie, are there any? Oh, here's one additional question. Is there the option to use Dynamics as an LMS tracking training progressions and completions for volunteers? So in the volunteer management app, there is some level of skilling, I guess I would say. It's not going to be a deep LMS where you're going to go in, you're going to complete classes, and you're going to do some of those components. So it's not going to get to that level. I wouldn't call it an LMS, but it does have some skilling functionality where I can identify skills that somebody has. I can put them through, different steps that they need to, achieve to get to a certain level of skill. But as far as the deep LMS, you're not going to find that within volunteer management. There was also, Katie just reminded me, we had some questions on grant management. As part of that nonprofit common data model that you see across the bottom, there is grant management within that. Grant management is interesting though, because a lot of the times it doesn't, and you all know this better than I do, it doesn't just interact with your constituents, but it also has some funding components to it. So usually, depending on how you're tracking your grant management, it may be something where the MC4N platform is the start of that, knowing what distributions we've done and whatnot, but you also are probably having some fund management that you might have in your ERP. And so Microsoft has a couple different ERPs that may have some part of the financial component to managing grants. So from a grant management perspective, that's one of those areas that we would say, let's have a discussion, do a little deeper discovery on specifically what grant management is to your organization. Are you receiving grants? Are you giving grants? And that usually helps us determine where what the best solution is from that perspective. There's a question here, is Copilot available in French? Tom, do you know that answer?
Yeah, I was just looking it up. There's definitely information about using Copilot in different languages, and French is included. I know that generally, as it's been rolling out, it's been English and US market to start, and then kind of localizing and expanding from there. But I can put a quick link in the comments about Release Wave 2, where it has some more French language information.
And then Chad, there's a question around donor advised funds. This is one of those areas that I would say we dive a little deeper into to give you to figure out exactly what components might fit in MC4N, what components might end up in an ERP, what some of those systems you're using are today, to figure out exactly what the solution is. One thing I will say about Microsoft's business applications area, which is where they have their CRM and ERP and then Power Platform, is generally speaking, you're going to get holistically from, reaching out to your constituents all the way through receiving the donation and managing those funds on the back end. It just may not be, the application that you're seeing on the screen might not be the right place to put it, but they have a system to be able to do it. One other question that kept coming up was around Copilot. So Copilot within Microsoft, there's a number of different Copilots depending on what you're doing, what application you're in. So there was a question around SharePoint and OneNote. SharePoint and OneNote will have, I think it was announced that OneNote or Copilot is coming to OneNote. The specific Copilot that Tom was showing as it relates to the Outlook component is taking Outlook and hooking it to either Dynamics 365 Sales Enterprise. In this case, we were using Fundraising Engagement on top of that, or Salesforce, and then bringing the components of your CRM together with your email and your interaction from an Outlook perspective. So as it stands today, there's no integration from a Blackbaud perspective where it can connect to Blackbaud or Razor's Edge. It can connect to Salesforce, but obviously we recommend Dynamics. Katie, were there any other questions that I missed? It looks like a question around, is the Power BI dashboard standard set of KPI on MC4N, or is it custom? So this is actually a dashboard that Microsoft provides, and it's using some of the grant management functionality to manage those programs underneath it. Generally speaking, with Power BI, what you're going to want is, you're going to have specific KPIs that you're looking for. So it has some standard ones to show you how the programs within your, using the program or the grant management, how they're performing. But a lot of the times those Power BI dashboards are going to be fairly personal to the organization and even the user group.
Lee, there is a follow-up to the question about CRMs, if there's any plans to connect to other CRMs with the Copilot.
I have not heard anything. We can look and work with Brian to see if there's anything on the roadmap, Linda, but as of right now, the only ones that I'm aware of are Salesforce and Dynamics.
Yeah, and Linda, we can probably research that question and see whether or not we can get you some additional information about that, what that roadmap looks like.
And then it looks like Scott has another question here. Profits using Blackbaud, is there an option to feed into Dynamics from some of these third-party? Oh, never mind. I just answered it. Perfect. There is, I have heard this. Obviously, this is a Microsoft webinar, but I believe the Blackbaud generally is very open to Power Platform, and Power Platform is what a lot of the tools that we're talking about are built in. So there is a lot of connection from a financial edge perspective that you can get into from Power Platform and Fundraising Engagement. The other thing I would say is what we're seeing on the screen, you can take this in pieces. You don't have to take everything. This isn't, you get in and you could use Fundraising Engagement, then you could turn on volunteer management, then you could turn on constituent marketing journey. So it allows you to get into this over time. Program client CRM. I'm not sure what that is. There's a question regarding that. There is program management within MC4N. That's another area that we actually say, let's have a discussion, because you can get to program management, then you can get all the way down to the level of project management, and where that fits is usually a discussion that we'll do as part of a discovery to learn more, so we give you a good answer around it. But there is functionality around program management. I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Tom, very much, and Katie, for all your help and great presentation. Hopefully, everyone was able to take something away from it. And again, as a reminder, we will be following up and providing the recording and the presentation link in about 5 to 7 days. So, on behalf of Boyer and Associates, for the incredible job they've done, and on behalf of Microsoft, thank you for attending today's session, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.